I just watched Dr. Steve Storage's Instagram story. He's a psychiatrist, where he talks about what happens to our brain when we run. He said that it's good for our mental health and it is overall better for our brain. Because I trust him, as I went to medical school with, I'm gonna test to see if I can create a better content as I run. So here we go. Actually, I could not run and talk at the same time. I'm not as talented as Dr. Steve Storage, so I'm just gonna talk normally. So one benefit of having a side gig or business is that I can write off Korean BBQ, which I love, as long as I bring the right people to the restaurant and talk about the right stuff at the restaurant. So I want to share with you what that write-off strategy entails. Whew, it's funny, I'm burning all the Korean barbecue that I had this morning creating this content. So there are 5 requirements that must be met for business meal deduction to be allowed. And I'm going to share with you today. Okay? So number 1, in order to write off a business meal, the taxpayer or I would need to be physically present at the restaurant, as well as my clients or patients or business colleagues. On Zoom to share a meal with them virtually won't work. There's exception to this rule. If I can't be there for various reasons, that my employee can be there on my behalf. So number 2, at least some portion of the dining time has to be dedicated to discussing a business matter. So for example, when I took my real estate client couple out to a Korean restaurant, Ogane, after showing them several properties, and we had nice Korean barbecue there, delicious, right? And we spent time getting to know each other, talked about which properties they liked and disliked, and they shared with me what kind of properties or house that they're looking for. So since we're all there physically, and we also talked about business, then Korean barbecue dinner fulfilled these 2 requirements. So number 3, there needs to be a reasonable expectation that a business will come out of this meal, right? So my expectation, hope, was that they'd like me even more after this delicious Korean barbecue, so that they would continue to use me to find them the right property and negotiate and close a deal for them. So number 4, the meal expenses cannot be lavish or extravagant under the circumstances. So if I took that same couple out to Salt Bay restaurant and served them gold-plated steaks, that probably would have been considered as lavish or extravagant under the particular circumstance, unless I was selling them multi-million-dollar properties, which wasn't the case. So number 5, you gotta have substantiation, proof. So while actual receipt is not required, if the meal expenses were less than $75, I think it's best practice to keep a restaurant receipt. So write down the business purpose and business relationship with the individuals at the diner, right? So what I did at the Korean restaurant was I wrote down the property addresses that we visited that day, and wrote down their names, and wrote post-showing huddle as a business purpose. So that would meet all the requirements as a business substantiation. So assuming all of these 5 requirements are met, then 50% of the meal expenses can be a business deduction. So just to clarify, it's not 50% of my meal, it is 50% of the entire meal cost. That's somewhat unfortunate, right? Because if I fed a party of 10 and I had only a bowl of white rice, I can still only deduct 50% of the entire meal. So hopefully this helps, and I had a lot of fun making this content. Thanks to Dr. Steve Storage, and I hope to see you at next tax clinic.